Welcome to Talking Art, episode 15, and I've really been looking forward to doing this video and talking about a historic West Coast abstractionist, Don Totten. He passed away early in his career, but created a stupendous body of work from the late 1940s into the mid-1960s. It's the best moments in my career when I get to work with a family, the estate, and a body of work, and reintroduce it to the art market. As an introduction, I am going to read a quote by the artist. "In these times, there has been a great change in regard to what is good in painting. Now the completed painting attempts to capture some of the life before thought only possible in the sketch." I'm sort of jumping into the middle of Totten's career here with a 1958 work titled Portuguese Bend. And I picked this work to start just because it demonstrates so much of what you see in all of Totten's work. This use of yellow, light that really sort of radiates out from the piece, but the fact that he likes to work with a lot of forms that actually come together, interlock, and work with each other. As we just mentioned with Portuguese Bend, Totten basically always works with color through these interlocking, touching forms and shapes. It's really demonstrated very well here in the piece called Construction. I love this work just because the color blocks are so strong and they have this great interrelation to each other. And where we see this manifested perhaps best is in a work called Color Structure, where Merle Shipper writes in 1997, "Transparent forms might well have prompted the artist and critic, Arthur Secunda, to praise what he saw as abstract floating forms suspended in a filmy atmosphere of restrained joyousness." We segment off of this as we walk around and look at a piece called Arizona 2. And around 1960, he makes a trip to Arizona. Always with Totten, we're going to see that his environment, nature, informs and inspires his works. And we see that here in this piece. In Arizona, we get the feel and the colors that the desert might have inspired. I'll also mention, even though I'm not sure it really happened, that to me there's this Clifford Still sort of approach to nature. A very ambitious canvas by the artist is Baroque. In this work, once again, we see real action painting, strong strokes coming through, a lot of movement. And at this juncture, I'd like to note that Totten admired the work of Kandinsky, and I think that you're seeing some of that influence come through on this canvas. So we've put two works side by side of each other that show very different influences. On the right, we have Palos Verdes, which Don Totten very often, I believe, would go outdoors. And whatever he saw outside, he might bring inside, and certainly then informed what came out on the canvas. On my left here is Synchrony, which we need to mention here the influence of Stanton McDonald Wright, who was a teacher in California at this time, and Totten worked underneath him and would have been aware of his theories on synchrony, which clearly influenced a piece like this. As we look at more of his works, I think it becomes evident that Totten is an artist who is what I call a painter's painter, meaning a lot of times painting is what interested Totten, and we get a sense of that. We get a sense by his joy and use of color, his brushwork within any particular work. And with this piece, I see little bits of his personality come through, like over here on this side, he uses this sort of amorphous form over there that we see in another work that we'll look at in a few moments. Very interesting to put two works together which are from different time periods. This Kandinsky-inspired work, which has a very organic feel to it, and this tighter piece, which has a little less movement. Both of these works, though, in a room can function in a very organic way with naturalistic woods, or in a very sleek environment to bring in an organic feel. We started by looking at the mid-career works of Don Totten. I purposely did this because I wanted you to see the earlier works afterwards. Why is that? Because I basically feel that Totten arrived at who he was as an artist with his mid-career works, whereas these earlier works, they're stupendous and I love them. You can see that he has a similarity to such American artists as Charles Green Shaw, George L.K. Morris. When you look at a piece like this, even an artist like Paul Klee comes to mind. There's a tightness, but what we see is that a lot of the forms that you see here, we see again, but in a looser manner. Totten has been described often as a reserved and quiet man. However, I'm sitting in front of a work titled EO, which says otherwise. Very often, the way that somebody appears to be is quite different to how they present themselves on the canvas. I'm going to read again a quote from Merle Shipper. He says about this particular work that the artist was also concerned with the fusing of geometry and expressionism, which is subtly asserted in EO, a mass of transparent planes suspended from the upper edge of the canvas over a yellow field. Order and simplicity suggesting the influence of Japanese art, an abiding interest of the artist, as well as the work of Robert Motherwell. As I've been reading and learning about Totten, I was very struck by a particular quote from the artist. We all have times when we are particularly aware of something greater than our ego selves. I have prized these lucid moments. I realized that if we could fulfill the conditions of simplicity, poverty of spirit, and purity of heart, we can realize our inmost selves.